So this will be a warm-up. So I need everyone to come to the front. It will be safe, I promise. Just leave your stuff. If you need your laptop or your phone as you work, as we do this, please feel free to do so. But we will be moving across the room just to be able to understand where everyone is at. So the warm-up, I'll assume I'm you, and I'm being asked, what events do I prefer? I'm an introvert. I prefer online events. So I will go this side and sit here. And then the discussion will come about, like, Fiona, why do you prefer online events? And it will just be a back and forth. And then maybe someone from in-person events would convince me on why online events are better. Does that make sense? Okay. So everyone, please, yes. If you're in between, we'll save this middle slot for you, yeah? And you'll be prepared to tell us why you're in between, yeah? Okay, so we'll start with the first question about how exposed were you to US funding this time last year? So if you were very exposed, please come to this side. If you weren't exposed at all, please have a seat this side. Fantastic. Wow, no one was exposed? Interesting. This makes it much, you're in the middle or you're, okay, fantastic. So I would love to hear from each and every one of you because we're a very intimate group, right? And let's try and make it to 2 minutes so that we can hear everyone's thoughts. I promise you something interesting will come out of this. So if you weren't receiving US funding, is it that you didn't want it or that you couldn't get it? So help me with the micros, please. We'll quickly start from here. And if you don't have an opinion, you just say pass and we can pass it on. Pass, fantastic.
I just didn't know about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
From Ghana. Okay. All right.
I never got an opportunity to apply.
It never interested you in any way?
It did, but I think because of other interests, we really never got an opportunity to apply.
Is it that from the region you're in, there's more diversity in funding that you were able to say, I don't have the urgency to apply?
No, I mean, there was one with the US Embassy that we wanted to apply for. So that's the one I'm speaking about. Wow. That really never, because we were busy.
Yeah.
So it eventually fell away, but that's the only one I was familiar with.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm seeing so far is that there was not much familiarity with US funding.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I think it's, for me and her, it's similar in that I wasn't exposed to it that much. And when I would find opportunities to apply, the barriers to entry seemed so big because most of the time I would have to apply as an individual and they would require organizations, and it shouldn't be a young organization. It should have received funding before, things like that.
Sounds very familiar. Yes,
okay,
please.
I'll pass on this one.
Okay.
So we did have some funding coming from the US, but most of our funding was from like different funders. So, and then we had long-term funding like partnerships that ran like 5, 6, 7 years.
Wow.
So because of that, we weren't as exposed. So there was one funder that was kind of affected, but then they still ended up giving us some funding in the end. But it wasn't for like corporations, it was for it was events, and so it wasn't like for our core editorial work. Yeah.
Amazing. That's nice.
I'd say I wasn't really exposed.
Okay.
First of all, I'm still in university. So we tried applying for one as a group of students to do a certain project, and we didn't really meet the qualifications because it was just a company that was starting.
Yeah.
And it was a funding that needed us to at least have gotten funding before.
Yeah.
So as a startup, it was really difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll still come to you. Yes, please.
I would say that we have had funding from the US previously, because especially in the space we operate in, there isn't much in terms of funding opportunities for media and performance industry. But this time last year, we were not exposed to any, so because of the limited opportunities.
Blessing in disguise.
I was trying to
Yes.
consulting
Yes.
because we've had funding by the USAID before.
Yeah.
But currently, one of our major donors is Ford Foundation. So I don't know whether we are here, we're in the middle. We're in the middle, yeah, because we still have Ford Foundation, although it's coming to an end this year. But we weren't directly impacted the way other organizations were, say like loss of jobs and like grants being cut off. But also on the diversification bit, organization, like we had a preview of when Trump would get to the office, how things would run out. So I think also focusing on foundation helped us a little bit. So I'd say we're in the middle, not on the.
I agree.
I think she's answered for both of us because I
right.
think the discussion was, are we still in the US funding or not? Because we had it like the USAID, we had that funding like 5 years ago, but the funds, like the project came to an end.
Yeah.
So we haven't really, right now we are using a different donor. So I think we're still debating on that.
Okay, good.
All right, so I moved because I realized that on reading the question, I thought we were talking about like US institutional funding. And I thought it was not very clear on what that was.
Yeah.
So we weren't too exposed to US institutional funding. Thankfully, the projects that we were running the time had elapsed, but we do have a huge chunk of individual donors from the US. And that has also been affected slightly, but not in a dramatic way.
Not in a
like,
dramatic
yeah.
Okay, that's good. Welcome to our new members who have joined. We're just doing an interactive session where we're moving where we feel strongly about certain opinions. So for now, we started off with the question about how you were exposed to US funding, and majority of the audience wasn't really exposed, and we're just trying to understand that. Do you want to share your experiences, if you have any, about US funding? Yes? Okay.
I work for a non-profit, a Center for Investigative Journalism, and we had support from NEDI, National Endowment for Democracy, and Trump having NEDI suspended immediately. Then they realized maybe they still needed to support some kind of this week of work. Then they came back, and then they are going away for.
Okay. Did their coming back support you, like prepare you in any way? Like their support that came shortly, has it given you enough time to buffer for when they leave
At least
again?
it was a good period of notice for us to prepare that we are going to lose them. It was almost 8 months or 9 months.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, sure.
Good.
For me, I work at a marketing agency, and and a lot of the work I do is a lot of campaigns. So one of the clients I had to manage was an NGO, and it was a good contract, to be honest, but that happened, and then we lost the contract, and then it's just we're in limbo, so we don't know what's happening, and they keep saying we'll come back, like, no, we don't think you're gonna come back. But yeah, so it's cost us business.
Did you have to have like team cuts and all that? A lot of organizations experienced some level of reduction.
For that, no, because we were different people working on different accounts, just you one put together.
Yeah.
So it didn't really affect us like that. It's just we lost business as a business. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you all for sharing. We continue this momentum, yeah? So the second question was, how diverse are your sources of funding today? And this was fed by, given the fact that a lot of organizations were really dependent on US institutional funding and US aid, it going away, was that ever a wake-up call for your teams to say, we really shouldn't rely on one donor? So if you currently have only one source, I would love for you to move here or stay here. And if you have a diversified amount of sources of income for your organization, please feel free to move here. So I would say less than 5 to stay here, more than 5 to move to this side.
Less than 5.
Less than 5.
Umeenda juu sana, ungesema tu.
So here for this segment, I want us to, again, all of us to have a chance to share your numbers. And then if anyone feels comfortable enough to share their sources, right? So that I don't put everyone on the spot. I'm assuming this is all one. Yeah. The less than 5, is it 2, 3, 4? Could you pass the mic, please?
Hi, good people.
Hello.
I'm Abuka Alfred.
Hi, Abuka.
Other people know me as Menstrual Daddy. So I work for an organization supporting comms.
Okay.
For us, I think currently we have 2.
2, okay.
Yeah. And then also now we have an online radio that we have set up. An online radio and a resource center that, so for resource center, the community can hire. So it is more like our sustainable stability plan for the organization. So we have now the radio and also provide now room for people also to hire podcast space.
Nice.
So we are receiving support from MasterCard for one of our project that is mainly skewed to young women, persons with disability, and a bit of refugees. Then we also have now another project that is focused on climate information from now Resurgency. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
But it's tough.
Yeah. Next, please. Thank you.
At Sinuka, we have 3. Yes, 3 sources of funding. Right now, the pressure, of course, it's there.
Yeah.
Because now you have to get more funding. Because like I'd mentioned before, Afford is coming to an end this year.
Yeah.
So I say it's 2. Because this is a reporting year. Because you can't implement on the last year of a grant, no? So we have 2 sources of... So it's Open Society Foundation and NED.
Wow.
Yes.
I work for an organization called the Platform for Investigative Journalism, and PIJ in short. We are part of a network of non-profit centers for investigative journalism based in Southern Africa, called IJ Hub. So IJ Hub does fundraise resources on behalf of all the centers in Malawi, Namibia, Botswana, Lesotho, and Zambia. So when you look at IJ Hub pool of resources, it has a lot of resources, but we are taking it as one. They can fundraise from USAID, Ford, or any other institution, but I'm taking that as just one source of funding. Then we have another source of funding that we are doing as PIJ. We have a grant with HIVOS, and that is the second source of funding. But now, because of the recent changes in the donor environment, we have tried to see, we're exploring ways of how can we commercialize some of our work, but also how do we invite in other donors to also come in and support us, including individuals, the way media organizations like The Guardian do, inviting new members of the public, their leaders, to also support the work. So that's something which has happened because of the earthquakes that took place recently. Yeah.
Thank you. So for the 5+, the lucky ones in the room, yeah, I would love to put only 2 people on the spot. Anyone comfortable enough to share their 5+ sources? Eric?
Okay. I've just realized that a lot of us are getting funding from the same people.
Yeah, it should make you sweat now.
Ford Foundation, I've had OSF, I've also had HIVOS, and NED. And we've also gotten funding from Forum Civ, gotten funding from, who else? We also have, we get money from DW as well. Yes. So we have a lot of like different partnerships. And one of the reasons why we didn't end up getting a lot of US funding, I've just remembered, is we had applied for a grant at the beginning of 2025. And that was when all of that stuff was happening. So I guess we were fortunate in that sense. But the way we've been able to diversify our funding is because we tend to kind of apply directly to these organizations. And then like when they have call-outs, like with Ford, for example, we had, which actually the government tried to use against us at some point, saying we're funding Maandamano, and because African Censored starts with an A, we were number one on that list. Yes, but because of the way we kind of cultivate relationships with our funders, they tend to connect us with other funders. So we're able to diversify our funding sources. And even as some of these grants kind of come to an end, we're able to kind of forecast like what do we need to fundraise in order to keep up our operations and to keep going. So I'd say we're fortunate in that sense because we're very visible as a result of our work. And that also helps us to fundraise more, which helps us do more work. So it's kind of like a cycle.
Thank you, Eric. That's beyond helpful. Really, I'm taking notes for myself. Like, okay, I should do this. Anyone else in the 5+? Yeah, thank you.
Since I passed the other question,
yes.
I can respond to this one. So I can neither confirm, about the 10+, but I know it's not, 5 and it's not 1. I can not disclose some of these sources of funding, but many of the organizations that have been mentioned already, we also receive or have received funding from them. We're here because we've been around for over 30 years. So we're not new, in this space. And on top of that, we do so much work. If you ask anyone from, about Moxie Africa or Media Monitoring Africa, there's so many different programs and projects that we implement with different partners. But also we're very big on collaborations. So even when we're applying for funding, so I think that has also worked. We hardly apply as one organization. We, collaborations. Exactly. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just stay. Oh, yeah, we have one more comment.
So I'm not currently in the professional field yet. I'm a student, or rather a finishing student. I'm in Strathmore University. And I think we have 10+ sources of funding for sure. But I think most of it comes from research. But then even before we are funded through research, the organization has to show a structure that the people who are professors, for example, and use the organization as a consulting firm, they have to be putting it back into the organization. So maybe they have to teach undergraduate or master's programs or PhD programs so that they can also learn more and produce more in terms of from doctor to professor on their way to becoming that. So that the research is continuous and never ending. So it's self-sustainable, but I think it also really attracts a lot of people.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a very interesting perspective. Now back to the 1+. I'm very curious to know how many of you are getting this 1+ from core funding. Like it's core funding or you're relying on grants?
Sadly, very ashamed to speak right now when there's 10+. I'm like, do I belong here? Yeah, no, we've got one funder and it's core funding, fortunate enough. But I think the reason why it's very difficult for us to get funding is because our work focuses on public broadcasting. So a lot of funders no longer see value in public broadcasting because of the digital space where, it seems to be more important and everybody's moving to that space. So you do get funders that understand the importance of public broadcasting, but others are just like, is it still relevant? And we've also lost funding over the years because we're an advocacy group. So once we've achieved certain milestones, organizations are like, well done, so there's no need for us to fund you anymore because, you've overcome this challenge. Yeah.
Thank you, Yanda. Anyone else? Okay. I sympathize. We'll go on to the next. No, I'll skip this for now, but I'll go to this because I've heard many of you have mentioned that you're funding within the same spaces. And here I will ask you, don't even look at this question here. For those of you who have this similar, like OSF, NED, MacArthur, who else? Ford Foundation. I'm curious to know what your experiences have been when it comes to these donors, right? And again, it's an open space. This is Chatham House rules. Ignore the camera and the recording. So just to see what narratives, framing and evidence is working for you. This is for me to understand if the donor landscape is more specific to the organization, or they have their own set rules, and us as organizations have to conform to them. Does that make sense? Yes? So anyone, I'll just take two comments for anyone who is open, and you don't have to mention the donor name, but just your experience so far. For those 30 years plus, how has it changed over the years? Has it become much tough given the funding landscape is also declining? And how are you adapting? So even for the 1+, in case you are working with a foundation, if there's anything I'll stop saying that. I'm seeing you being like, it hurts. Okay. For those of us who are lucky enough to have funding, what your experience has been, with these foundations, philanthropy and foundations. Two hands. Anyone? Yes, please.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
First, I think it will be, what are these target groups that these foundations or philanthropy entity focus on? So when you align with those target groups, because for the longest time, people have been aligning with the work they do and neglecting who is going to benefit or who is going to be impacted. So changing from aligning the work and now focusing on this right holder has really helped us in the journey of us resource mobilizing. So if these this entity is really focusing on empowering, if it's persons with disability, then how best can you ensure that you have also a unique approach in terms of you engaging this target group? And then also there's another thing of which organization are the donor really affiliated to, because with the model of funding that is changing now, applying for funding as a consortium is more effective than just you alone. So let me use an example of like Netherlands. There is high chance you will get funding in Netherlands if you align with an entity like Rutgers, because he has experience in holding a lot of resources, and then also they have implemented a lot of projects, and specifically, maybe let me say, health, with the bias of sexual reproductive health, or if you are aligning yourself with an entity like HIVOS, then the aspect of inclusivity has to come out. Yeah, so that's how we have changed or evolved over the years in ensuring that at least we get more funding, or also strengthen the relationship that will yield more funding and resources in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. One more hand. Yes, there's a hand right here.
Okay, so I am fortunate to work for a foundation, but we still do get funding from foundations. And just for a bit of context, I work for the African Wildlife Foundation. We've been working on the continent for the last 60 years. So there's a lot of institutional knowledge There are a lot of partnerships and whatnot that have been going on since then. But from around 2020, we've been starting to reframe how we do conservation. And now it falls on us as the internal media shop to figure out how that framing presents externally. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a future for Africa where people and wildlife thrive. Now, that's a very different positioning for a conservation organization. And what we've been able to do is to set the standard internally that this is what we are doing. And we are not, we are fortunate enough to be able to say no to funders who do not agree with our vision. So I think there's a benefit to longevity, and there's a comfort that can come from that longevity and being able to set the narrative for yourself and make the decisions about who you can and cannot partner with. Yeah.
That's a very good point, Ariel. It raises my next question, and we don't have to dive into this, but how many of you who have had the experience with funding from philanthropy and foundations have had to conform your strategy to fit, similar to what you were saying, inclusivity, to fit into to align with what the foundations want? How many of you have had that challenge? Or you've had the freedom of saying, this is what we're doing, give us money for this? Yeah, the latter. Okay. All right, that's good to know. I won't dive into that because I know there's a lot of stories around that. So my next question is, how much of your funding is from big tech and telecoms? I ask this because there's a lot of opinions about funding from big tech, given our space in the media ecosystem. Here, I'll ask you to move. So if you have received funding from big tech, these are just a few examples I shared, but I know there's much more that you can relate to in your country, in your region. So if you have, please move this side. If you haven't, please move this side. Okay. All right. Interesting. It's still funding. Yeah, we're sustained by it. Okay. All right. Here yes, you want to say
I wanted
something?
to ask a question.
Yes.
My colleague from South Africa, I think. Yeah, I think it was a court ruling. Is it commissions for, that forced big tech to be paying back to media from the profits that they're making? Did you get your funding after that ruling or it was before?
You want to respond? Okay.
Trust someone to put us on the spot about the...
No pressure, no pressure.
But the answer to your question is no. So the funding that we've received from big tech is mostly around digital literacy programs that we implement as Media Monitoring Africa. For instance, we have one program called Web Rangers. So this is where we're basically skilling, empowering young people in schools, with the internet safety and basically how to take advantage of the internet and all of that. It's a big project. It's not just in South Africa. I think also in Kenya at some point it was here, if it's still not there. So on that particular project, we did receive funding from Google, Meta, and others. And not we did, we still have working partnerships with these organizations. I think I'll stop now but she had a very important question.
Please go ahead.
My question was if the funding could be in form of credit.
Is it sustaining your work to some extent?
Yes,
then stay there.
Oh.
Okay. Great. Now, I'm curious to know about those who haven't. Raise your hand. Ethical issue that because you don't believe in that type of funding, or you've tried before and it didn't work out. So for those who, because it's an ethical issue, just raise your hands. I won't put you on the spot, I promise. Okay, all right. Ethical. All right. For those who are not on the ethical level, is it because you don't want it or can't get it? Have you had your experience trying to apply for it? No. No? Yes? Okay.
So my experience is quite interesting because I previously worked in fact checking, where a lot of that work was funded by Meta, Facebook, Google, and then I also worked for a tech nonprofit that was also getting funding from some of the foundations attached to these tech companies, and then now I'm in a space where it's not practical to get funding from these tech companies because they tend to kind of want to lock you into their ecosystems in the work that you're doing. So, for example, if you get funding from, let's say, Google, they'll say, here is a free Google Workspace account that you can use. And then here is all of this incredible storage that you can also use for your files and things. So you get locked into these ecosystems if you take funding from them. And you can't now start kind of diversifying and spreading your risk. And that comes with its own inherent problems now that we're seeing all of this kind of surveillance stuff that comes in. So for us, it's also like a practical concern because we work in a very sensitive space. We do investigations, and it helps for us to have as much control as we can over our data and our information. And if we are beholden to someone who would kind of require us to use their tools because they're giving us funding, then it becomes a very difficult conversation. So it's out of let's say, a practical concern, and then also because it would put us in a weird situation. And then also the fact that a lot of these tech companies will shift priorities based on where the company's priorities are going. So if today they decide the big thing is crypto, you guys investigate all of these crypto scams, and then afterwards they say, thank you for investigating crypto. Now we want to go after Nigerian scammers. And so they're very fickle in terms of, because this isn't their core business. They're not media companies. They do advertising and data. So you as a media company can help them advance their interests up until a certain point, and then they say thanks. Then they continue. They say we'll take our money elsewhere, but this was fun. So you need to be ready to adjust based on these companies' priorities. And I think because of the nature of the work that we do, we need long-term stability. So it doesn't make sense for us to take money from them.
Thank you, Eric. Anyone else with some immediate reaction to what has been shared? Yes.
Thank you. So I'm not reacting to him. I'm just reacting to a part he said.
Yes,
and it made me think about the importance of autonomy when it comes to, as organizations, when it comes to, when you're looking around for funding. And I'm also responding to what he said earlier about the fact that it does help if you, longevity. If you've been in the business for a long time, you're able to set your standards and you're able to say no, no profanities, but, get lost. We will, if you're asking us to conform to your standards for us to get this funding, then if you have been in the business for a long time, such as Media Monitoring Africa has, and not to brag, but we come with experience, we come with the knowledge, we come with, many things that enable us to say no to conforming. But then I do get how it can get, it's, the lines can be blurred a little bit, particularly when you are at still Chatham House Room. Yes. Great. I'm glad no camera is in front of me. Currently, I did mention one of the programs. This is Web Rangers, where we do get funding from big tech. But currently, we are developing guidelines. I don't know how many of you know about the African Commission on Human and People's Rights Resolution 630 guidelines that have to do with basically developing these guidelines that will enable states to monitor these tech platforms in terms of how the tech platforms are faring when it comes to safeguarding information integrity through even independent fact-checking. So it can get a little bit tricky when you are developing these guidelines that are supposed to be monitoring these tech platforms. At the same time, you are working with them on the... so I just thought I wanted to share that. But autonomy and experience in the game, yeah.
Thank you so much. There's one more comment here.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring some context coming from the region that the tech companies increasingly interested in the big African countries, Nigeria, South Africa, and Kenya. But when you go beyond these countries, you go to Malawi, you go to Botswana, Zambia, they are not as much vested in seeing that they support the industries there. And I think that's one area that perhaps that as the institutions, when we are thinking of addressing some of the challenges in that space, we could do so collaboratively because other countries might not have the same leverage in getting any benefit from working with these tech companies. Have in mind even creatives in these countries. There are a lot of people in some of these countries who are on TikTok producing a lot of content, but they are not even benefiting anything. Well, that might not be the same in an economy like Kenya or Nigeria, where people, creatives, are benefiting from using these platforms. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think that's such a good point to keep in mind. And I just want to put a quick comment as we continue this. I hope you're learning from what's happening in different regions. If these are the experiences you want to use in your organizations, I hope you're really feeding in from what other organizations have experienced. So we'll go to the next point, and this is funding from the private sector. So before we continue with this, do you think that private sector and what we shared previously, big tech, are two different things? You want to say something? Yes? No, I saw you like, yeah? Where's the mic?
I have it.
Oh, we have a comment here, please.
So a lot of tech companies get public funding, especially in the US and in Europe, to do research and development. And then they also so they tend to operate as like they sell their shares on a stock market. So they're private, but they're not. I don't think so they are fully in the private sector. But if you look at a company like Safaricom, for example, it has up until recently a significant government shareholding. It's a tech company, and they have a lot of money to invest in the media, and they have a foundation. So it can be very nebulous. So they tend to be in the private sector, but then they operate in all of these different spaces. And you can also find that some may have even like a government arm, or like they have something that is like because Safaricom started as a parastatal, so they have significant government connections and other things like those. So companies are not it's not as clean where it's private, public, and so it's really difficult to make that distinction. But at the same time, I don't think that there is much, if you look at major media companies in Kenya, they tend to be private companies. So they also are in this space where they're getting funding from the same people who give us funding. So it's that's why I was like,
yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I just added this question here just to see some reactions, and that's why I pointed at you first, because I was like, oh, are we on the same mindset? So I completely agree with you, and I think for those who are experiencing private sector funding could relate to those who have experience from big tech, right? So we'll skip this question and go to development or investment banks. Has anyone here had the experience of funding from, for example, Africa Development Bank, World Bank? There could be much more institutions. Anyone lucky, unlucky enough? Yes? Would you mind sharing your experience on development banks, on how funding has come about for you? Don't ignore this question.
Yeah. Thank you. Again, it's pretty similar to what I was saying earlier. Because of how long we've been in the sector, we're able to collaborate with other people. We also collaborate with governments to reach out to investment banks and whatnot in the space that we are in. So it's a weird mix. It's not clean. There's a lot of collaboration that happens, and especially with governments, if that's the type of funding that you're looking for.
Because you have experience with foundations and now with banks, what would be your favorite? In terms of freedom, like the freedom to change midway in the project, the ability to let me just say the level of independence that you may have compared.
I think just by virtue of the fact that you're involving a government, there's a lot more rigidity on the investment bank side. With foundations, it's an agreement that you can arrive at and say, okay, so we've taken a look at this, we've tried to achieve our goals, it's not working out, and so we need to change course in one way or the other. With investment banks, that's a very difficult conversation to have to begin with, because again, the investment will go directly to the government and then the government. So there's a lot of bureaucracy just in the whole. And that's just been my experience. Not to say that
no, it's
that
very
exists.
valuable. You have
Yeah.
the experience. So thank you for sharing that. Yes, please. Okay. No, don't shut up, please. We need your voice.
So the previous question was around private, whether you've received. So we have received, and I seek your guidance. Is MultiChoice a private company? Yeah? Because currently, I mean, it was bought by, is it Canal Plus? And so now it's listed as is a public company operating for profit, something like that. So I just wanted to find out if it's a private company, if it's, I mean, before 2025, before Canal took over, because we have received funding from MultiChoice for one of our programs where we award journalists on the African continent for the stories they produce on children. It's called Iswelithle. And they were one of the biggest funders. They are, I think, still. So I don't know if it's private or not. Yeah.
I'll throw it to the audience. What are your thoughts, especially our South African audience?
Oh, no, this is an African. What we're funding was an African initiative.
Okay,
Is an African.
okay. I just mentioned Southern Africa because of MultiChoice being.
No, we get it. South Africa is always on, under fire when it comes to like, why are there so many South Africans in the room?
Not enough. Not enough. Any immediate reactions?
The question was whether MultiChoice
whether
is
it's private.
Yeah.
Whether it's private. I would say if I can give an immediate reaction, it really depends on where you're coming from. Affiliations between MultiChoice and Southern African countries is very different from what MultiChoice has with Eastern African and Western African countries. So what you're experiencing, you might have more of a relationship with MultiChoice to be able to determine whether this change makes it private or public or not. So that could be one of the reasons why we may not get an immediate response. But let's exchange emails. I would love to find out and get back to you. Yeah? Okay. This question is on advertising. So this may apply strongly towards news publishers. But if you're not a news publisher in the room and have worked with a news publisher before, do you know whether they actually receive money through advertising? Yes? Yes, there's moving. Come on, guys. After lunch. So if you have that experience, please move to this side. If not, please stay here. You look like you want to move. I won't put you on the spot. Great. I mean, it's helping me understand who's in the room as well, right? So for those, from my understanding and in my experience with GFMD, we do have a lot of members who are news publishers. Some of them have shared that it was not by choice. It was just as a form of sustainability. And of course, it's compromised their work because some of the advertising comes from government agencies who control the narrative that they share, right? So for some, it's not a choice. For others, it's a choice. Anyone want to comment on this, on their experiences? Yes, please.
Again, I work at a marketing agency, and
I was trying not to put you on the spot. I promise.
This is very direct, but so I think it's more of a disadvantage on their end because they rely on us for their business. And it's sort of our job to convince now the client, the account, that this is the form of media that works right now. And depending on whatever objectives they have internally, it would also help me know that we can go with this publisher and not this one. And then something I've learned from this media side is that they also come up with more innovative ways to try and look more delicious to us as an agency. So I just saw programmatic. Then I remembered, yes, there's actually, it works now. And I was like, why are you working? It's not supposed to work like that. But have I answered your question?
You have. I'm enjoying you continuing because you're really like spitting facts here.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a seesaw for me, really. They want this, but these guys have this, but they want another thing I really find very frustrating is that they somehow go directly to clients. So I don't know I highly doubt they get better rates because through the agency, they kind of get a discounted rate, but then I don't know what actually makes them go to the client, which I don't know.
Can I ask you a question? But if you tell me you can't answer, we'll skip. Yeah? No, feel free. Safe space. So as an agency, when you're coordinating all of this, are there ever any ethical guidelines that you follow for which, for example, the organization that's doing the promotion has shared with you, like, don't give me this job, or we will not accept sharing information from this organization or this government? Have you had that experience before, or everyone is just ready for work?
It goes back to what client it is you're handling. Okay. Because if you're doing, like if, for example, we're both working at the agency and I'm working on a bank and she also has a different bank. First of all, we can't work on each other's banks because in our market, they're competitors. So if now your media agency comes to me and then they tell me, we can do this, this, and this. I say, okay, fine. And then we give you, we get into business. Then it should be unethical for you to go to her or someone in your team to do the same, because now it's just wrong. It's wrong. And then there's also the part where I don't know, I want to say something skewed more to relevance as opposed to ethics, where you can't put your clients' things, you can't put up a campaign where it won't work. We can't be talking, you also don't want to look like your brand is deaf, really. So it's a thin line between relevance and ethics.
I like that perspective. You want to share? Yes, please.
So before I worked for the foundation, I used to work in advertising and then I moved to SportPesa. So in advertising, like she said, it's pay to play basically. This is what we want. We think this is relevant, and so are you willing to take it up? But now with SportPesa, we can say ethics are out of the window because the brand itself is not necessarily ethical. And for those who don't know, SportPesa is a sports betting firm. So with SportPesa, it was, we have X amount of shillings for you. Are you going to take it or not? And that was a huge contributor to like newspapers and whatnot. If you think about our daily spend, it was in the upwards of almost 5 million shillings across all media platforms. So when that is changed, like that's enough money to make people, skimp out on their standards or ethics. So again, like she said, it depends on the client, and also, let's be honest, how much money is on the table.
Thank you. Those are very helpful perspectives. I didn't anticipate to have that feedback from this room, so I really appreciate that. Before we move to the next question, anyone here who deals with subscription or membership? Okay, then we'll skip the next question. This was the question I really wanted to get to, and I think it is our last, I know you're sad, right? You enjoyed moving. I know. So get ready to move. Get ready. So, how concerned are you about funding to media from China, Russia, and Gulf states? So, if you're very concerned, please move this side. And if you're not concerned at all, please stay here. And if the middle is full, seeing that, your opinions, please feel free to move to the back. Nice. So, unfortunately, here I would really love to hear everyone's thoughts. I studied international relations. I'm very big on geopolitics, so I'm very keen on understanding what everyone's perspectives are. Are you comfortable? We can start from here. Yes. Okay. Just 1 second. The mic is coming. Remember, 2 minutes max, or let's say 1 minute. Yeah, so that we can hear everyone.
Okay, maybe I'll just take 30 seconds. My name is Josephine Chieng. I work with a rural-based organization called Rural Women Action on Street Health in Kakamega. So for me, I would say I'm really concerned. I don't know if the concernees were there or here, but then it boils down to, the agenda setting theory. When you fund me, you drive my story. So really, I would really be concerned about getting the funding. But then when I also look in terms of the landscape and the financial situation that our journalists have, and also just boiling it down to how much they get paid and the exposure that is there with the media houses that are outside there. So it becomes a very, not really an ethical issue, but it becomes an issue of survival, an economical issue for our media houses.
Thank you, Josephine. I will go to the next, please.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Stephen.
Hi, Stephen.
And in my view, funding coming from those countries, I don't actually even mind, because it's all about talking about the bigger devil and the smaller devil. Because if you go to the Western side, the US and other countries, they give you aid with conditions. You're not kind of free to be creative, to do what you want. Also, they control your story. If you see maybe, let's say in the Russia-Ukraine war, most people were thinking Russia is losing because the CNN and BBC are from the western side of the country, and they have to portray the picture of that we are strong. So funding is funding, as long as...
He said what he said.
I know most of us have the same idea, but I think it's just comparing what your values are, and if they align with your values, regardless of Russia, China, or whatever, the government, as long as you see you can do it and they align with your values, I think you go for it.
Thank you so much, Stephen. On to the next one.
I'll pass.
You pass. It's Chatham House rules. No one will. Thank you, though. Yes, please.
I don't know what to say because, okay, I haven't really interacted with anything to do with direct funding from anyone, really, because we're in business. But I don't know, I just don't like how it affects the rest of us. It's just bogus. Like, go do your own things, but then leave us alone. But yeah, what Josephine was talking about, if you fund me, then now I have to be in your rulings. And it's really, for creatives, it's not nice.
So technically, your mind is here, but your body is here.
Yeah. Okay, both.
But thank you. Yeah, there was more space.
Everyone was moving and I was the only one. That's
I'm in the middle because I think he also pointed it out well, little devil, big devil. But at the same time, you also need to keep the company moving through this funding. And you have to do what you have to do sometimes. But at the same time, there's also, because as a creative artist, you want to be able to express yourself with the work you do. But you'd have some guidelines, some things they'll tell you you need to remove, especially when it comes to government funding and things like that. So it's our generation will say it's 6-7. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
6-7.
Okay.
I'm in the middle because personally I feel any funding from a government to media is problematic. And the reality is that many media institutions or outlets get funding from governments. And what happens, issues of media freedom and whatnot, for centuries, and well, not centuries, maybe that's for a long time, and that's how come, at some point we were arguing statutory regulation and anyway, we're not going to go into that. But it's always problematic when a media house is receiving funding from a government, whether it's from the national, government or it's an international government. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I'm also here because, in the middle, because what's the alternative, to those countries? Is it US? You see what's happening in US. Mm-hmm. Look at media freedom or even just freedom of expression in the US by the US government. If you are not getting funding from China, Russia, or Gulf, are you saying you're going to get it from the US government? Or anyway, we don't have to delve into that. But the bottom line is that we need to ensure that media have the capacity to, operate freely, whether they're getting funding from whoever they're getting funding from. Mm-hmm. But they should also have the capacity to have the skills or ability to source for alternative funding so they don't have to, get it from a government.
Thank you.
And it's difficult.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So because we are in the same building, are you speaking for the both of us? Yeah, so I think for me, the biggest issue, I completely agree with Lister, but I think just to add to that, freedom of expression is very important. And if you look at countries like China, their freedom of expression is very questionable. So there's a saying that says, whoever pays the piper plays the tune. So I think even if they're funding outside of China, so there's still going to be that government control that's exerted on media houses. Yeah, so I think that's the concern. But I'm also in the middle because listening to speakers earlier here that were saying, no, because we've been in the business for a very long time, so we do have autonomy. So I'm thinking maybe to a certain extent, the organizations can push back and ensure that there are certain standards that are put in place. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm in the middle because I believe it's always a case-by-case scenario. Mm-hmm. What are they funding and what are you working on? So if, for example, we are a storytelling collective, basically. So if we want to tell stories on Kenyan history or whatever that has happened, whoever is willing to push that narrative and work with us, I believe as long as there are no ethical issues per se, I would be open to it. So it's case-by-case basis.
Good point.
Yeah, I think the point is, as all of the previous speakers have said, funding is funding, but then also at the same time, journalism is journalism. So you find a situation where there's stories that will be funded by, say, Al Jazeera or Xinhua or like these countries, which wouldn't be told in the, which wouldn't be produced by the countries where these stories are from. You have Kenyan stories, you have journalists producing documentaries that go onto Al Jazeera, and then they get aired, and then they get traction because they've been aired on Al Jazeera. And then the government will come and start saying, oh, tunaonyesha wageni nini, like what are we showing the visitors, the guests? So it helps to have these kinds of stories being funded by these countries because there's no money going into public media in this country, for example. But at the same time, you have all of these human rights abuses and all of these things that are happening in these countries where this funding is coming from that you can't report on as, let's say, an African who is looking into like women being trafficked to Dubai, which is a story that was done by the BBC. So it's interesting that we're being asked about China, India, and Russia, and the Gulf states, but we're getting French money, we're getting German money, we're getting British money going into the media, which isn't questioned as much. You have the BBC producing something like Blood Parliament, which was really fantastic for that kind of storytelling. But they're not going to tell the story of the Kenyan woman who was killed by a UK soldier, because that makes their country look bad. So up until the country where this money is coming from becomes the focus of the storytelling, they're very willing and very happy to give us that money to do that storytelling. So we take that money, we do what we can with it up until there's a certain red line you can't cross. So as long as it's money that comes with lines and that you can't cross, then you just do what you can with it, because the choice is you either take that money or you shut down and you go home. So if it helps us work, funding is funding, but then at the same time, if it means you can't tell particular stories, then there's no real value in taking this money.
Wow. Just wow.
Everyone has said majority of what I would have said. For me, it's more of editorial independence. Because in as much as we are saying money is money, yes, money is good, and we agree media, they need like the money and the funding to be able to do the work that they are doing in their spaces. But also, when you look at a country like China and Russia, we've had like conversations or stories from the various news outlets of how there are countries who are, what term can I use? It's more state-centered media. So how independent are, for example, Kenyan media going to be if they're getting funding from a country like that? And for me, it's not about one specific media or one specific donor. It's more of money is good, but how good is it if it's aligning with the priorities of like other countries rather than the agenda we want to push? And also, if you're getting funding from China, for example, 90 out of 100%, they'll want us to produce content that is aligned with their own priorities, that it's not necessarily the issues that Kenyans are dealing with, for example. And when you bring it now to the Kenyan context, for example, we've had, if you're working in the CSO space, if you're working in the media space, especially the last 2 years have been really crazy with the issues of the shrinking media space, journalists being arrested, harassed. So when you look at it from that perspective, then you ask yourself, is it really a wise choice to get money from countries that are pushing the same agenda?
Fantastic. Are we still in the middle, or you're very concerned?
No, I mean, I'm very concerned.
Okay. Okay, let's go to the middle one.
So first of all, I love the conversation. Like when it
Same.
started there and it got here, I was like, my mind has
Right.
gone changing. And I agree, funding is funding. And I think we just have the opportunity to be smart about who we get our funding from for what stories. So if we want to tell the story of the lady who was killed by the British people, why can't we go get funding from these guys? Yeah, so like, why can't we play the game that other people are playing? We can't just always say, oh, this money is not good. It can be good for something, you know. So yeah, I think that's the position that I'm in now. And that is because of what all of you have said. Thank you so much.
Great. Okay, let's hear the very concerned group. Has your mind changed?
Yes, no. I was laughing because I thought we were on the same side, but I think exactly. I think I'll speak from a CSO perspective and also on the human rights point of view. Because like I'd mentioned, we work with young people. And just like my brother here had said, yes, you'll get the funding. Like classical examples, the BBC viewing. Good job that they did. But look at the extent of the pain that it cost. The producers are not even arrested, but the storytellers are the people who are arrested. They're still in the media fraternity. Look at Russia, for instance. A lot of young people, especially the young guys from the Nandi Hills and whatever, they're being taken to Russia to go and yet some are even still arrested. Some are they're being charged for treason. And then I see you can't report about that if you're being funded by Russia. The Chinese, if you go to Kilimani, it's like we have a small Chinatown. You understand? Yeah, it's not small. It's a big, it's a big Chinatown. as a matter of fact, our office tunaitanga, excuse me, there's a narrative. Good morning from Kili, because there's a lot of noise because they are building. But now you see, because we have funding from China, I can't come and say, oh, there are a lot of buildings around China. I have to be very conservative. Yes, of course, funding is funding, but Mimi, I'm very concerned because again, you stand from the ethical point of view. So what? Because it won't be me today. My generations to come and my future generations to come, they'll suffer the consequences of the decision that I made. However, it is still fine. Potato, potato.
Thank you.
I will skip.
No worries. Yes.
For me, really concerned. Just echoing what my sister has said, even the example that she gave, like the issue of Russia. And it's so sad, even currently, we have an educational institution that is offering scholarship, in the midst of all this. And the government is aware of this institution. People are going to Russia, and then also there is the issue of sometimes it even starts at the government level, because we have these treaties that the government signs, with these countries, and sometimes we may fall into traps of what governments agrees, because we don't know the impact that it has. We have seen after the US had cutting funding, the USAID, we also saw other countries doing the same. But we have other countries that have decided to still offer funding, but the question has been, in exchange of what? US has come back to Kenya. We had the issue of our data, being traded in the name of funding for the health. So I feel we have to be very cognizant, because me aligning myself with one country may also impact on other fundings that I have. And probably it may be on a rival country, in quote. So having a funding for a country like Russia, there's high possibility those state-affiliated organizations from maybe US may also cut funding on my side, because we are not speaking the same language. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, please.
I think I won't give an opinion. I have to sit and synthesize. I thought I had an opinion, but it might require more synthesis. Yeah.
I completely relate.
Fantastic question.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Great. I completely relate. I feel like I've had please pass it on to her. But I feel like I've had a whirlwind of emotions. I came here with this mindset, and now by the end of the day, I'm just like, I don't know what to think. Before you add on, my opinion, thank you for asking, is that there is such a big gap. GFMD recently released a report on media funding in Africa. And to tell you the truth, the reality is terrible. So on paper, we receive 518 billion US dollars. But this 518 billion US dollars, Africa gets only 0.3% when it comes to media. And it's not just media development, it's not just journalism, it's media and entertainment. Entertainment is on its own, right? And with the gap that came last year when US withdrew, there's such a big opportunity. This is not me saying that I'm for or against, I'm just stating reality. There's such a big gap for China, Russia, and Gulf states to come in, because there's such a vacuum. People have to pay salaries, right? You still have to produce content, and they're leveraging on that. So the reason I put this question up here is for you to reflect on, is it really about money? Just funding is funding? Or is it that there's a lot more to be concerned? And we'll briefly discuss more on that, on like what our plan Bs will be. But just to say for sure, there's actually a report that was released just last week about China coming in and funding media in Africa. I'll try remember, but if you're interested, please follow me after this. I'll give you the name of the report. And China is coming in without asking for anything. They'll just give you the money. Imagine that. That would feel like free money, right? But in the end, for sure, it comes with its own consequences. But it's something as well to reflect on if funding is funding or if it's something to be concerned about. The Gulf states are developing at a rapid pace currently, especially in the media field. And for sure, they are keen on expanding it past the Gulf region. So those are opportunities that are coming about in light of what happened last year. Just food for thought. I won't share much about what I think, but I've had like yes, no, like as you shared your opinion. So thank you so much for that. You want to add on, please?
I'm so glad that you mentioned the 0.03% that's going to African media. That's actually going to African media. I was listening to your presentation the other day at the African Editors Congress. And for me, that 0.03% is very concerning because when you look at the number, the billions, and you think African media are getting that much money, and the reality is, no, it's only 0. And as you're saying, it's not just news media, it's also entertainment. So for me, it brings me to the point that, and after hearing everybody, the media have to be empowered enough in such a way that, and I know I'm repeating what I said, but I want to expand on it, in such a way that they are able to diversify their funding. And one of the ways is actually to rethink the funding models because advertising is not working. There's so many things that are working against the media space right now. This is how come you end up having a newsroom that had 12 people now has 2 people, and you're still expected to produce quality, ethical work. How do you do that with 2 people in a newsroom? You end up, you become vulnerable to getting funding from, all of these so-called, big dark forces. Media have to be empowered in such a way that they, and not just empowered, but the funding model for media has to be reconsidered and reworked in such a way that we will not be talking about advertising and getting funding. And we'll also, maybe even just move on to, this is how come the resolution that she's working on, Resolution 631, the one that has to do with public service content, is very important because now you have to, you're not selling newspapers anymore, nobody's watching TV. So you move to the digital space, right? But then your work is not amplified. They're fighting with influencers and other sources of information. And the reality is that if you put up a news article, it will not be amplified because of the way the system is designed, because of the way the algorithms are designed. And so please, I'm sharing this on her behalf and also on my on behalf of the Special Rapporteur for Freedom of Expression and Access to Information in Africa, whom we are developing these guidelines for. It's very important that media gets involved, particularly around this. It's one of the ways we're going to sort out some of the issues that have been raised. Thank you.
Thank you as well. We have a hand at the back.
Hi, everyone. Sorry for joining late. I'll be honest. It was too cold to start from here. So I went and warmed up. But funding is something that I'm very passionate about because I am a resource mobilizer. I raise money for animal welfare. And I also wear many hats. I'm a media practitioner, and I work for a media house that is governed by a religious organization. So funding is funding, but it depends on your ethics. For example, if I talk about the hat that I wear, which is fundraising for equines. Equines are horses, donkeys, and mules. There's something happening in Kenya. People laugh about it, and that is donkey meat is becoming very prevalent in the market. People think it is just an alternative to beef, but the trade that is funding the donkey beef, the donkey meat, is the skin. The Chinese use the skin for medicinal purposes, and they make a traditional medicine called jiao. And therefore, they're funding the slaughtering of donkeys. What's my point? When Chinese media comes in, I don't know if you guys know, there's a free Chinese newspaper. You'll only find it in the China shops in specific places in Kilimani. And so I think it's called China Daily or China Today. You will never find a story on donkeys because they know that for them traditionally, they're slaughtering the donkeys for the traditional medicine. So while you're accepting that funding from the Chinese, there's another sector that is suffering. So it's good for you to know that even as you benefit, the way you said the Chinese will give you money for free, they know why they're doing that. Because on another side, there is something that is suffering. That's the Chinese. When it comes to the Gulf states, again, it depends on your ethics. If you're the kind of journalist who is passionate about LGBTQ rights or LGBTQ stories, you know that's not going to happen. If you're talking about the Gulf states, it will. If you're also passionate about feminism and women's rights, you know that's definitely not going to happen. So it's about your personal ethics as a journalist, what you stand for. Otherwise, you will receive money from anywhere. You'll receive from China, you'll receive from Russia, because if you're only looking at it from your stomach and what satisfies you and paying the bill, then you'll receive funding from anyone. But if you stand for something, then that means whether the money comes from China, from the Gulf states or Russia, because of what you believe in, it is not the kind of funding that you will accept. Thanks.
Wow. Okay. You want to add on? A question. Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
My question is, since we're talking about countries, I'd want to pose it to now you and the audience. What if, remember the question I'd asked about funding from companies? Does all this ideology still remain the same? Because if a company, okay, I'm speaking outside agency now, if a company would give me funding as a media person or house or someone in media, and one that will enable me to do something, so at least now I have some sort of capability. But then on their end, if they're also having other business that is not so nice, ethical, relevant, all those things, then would it still make sense? I don't know, would you now look at it from my perspective, like what kind of media person or house or media someone am I for accepting funding from these people, and behind the scenes that it doesn't make sense what they're doing? So I don't know, because right now we're only talking about countries. So I don't want to know.
No, I would say it also applies to companies, but the thought behind what we've done with the countries exercise would really apply to the question that you're sharing.
Okay.
There's the perspective of funding is funding. There's the perspective of standing for something so that will determine where you get the funding from. So if you can, the discussion we've just had right now, that would very well link up to what you're sharing. But if anyone has a differing thought or wants to add on to the question or wants to respond, please feel free to do so. But before you do so, I have shared this slide here. And again, we will do one last round. But instead of answering everything, you get to pick a question that you want to address that would fit your situation. So the first question is, what other funding should we be tracking? I've tried to cover everything that's currently taking place, but I don't know everything, right? We don't know everything. There could be new approaches that are coming up that we would love to hear more about. And if you're comfortable to fill us in, please do. Are we still pitching media support, or are we pitching governance, stability, digital transformation, and economic resilience to these donors? What approach are we taking? Should we make a shift with this approach towards these donors that we have presented today? And as an African, or within the continent, is our problem lack of funding or lack of positioning? That's something for you to think on behalf of your organization. And lastly, if donor funding continues to shrink, what's your plan B? So, perfect. We have only 10 minutes. So again, I'll be strict on let's not even do 2 minutes, 30 seconds, right? Let's start from that side. Okay. Okay, so 30 seconds. If there's any question that resonates with where you are at currently, please feel free to share.
The question that's made me curious is about pitching and positioning. Particularly, I've never thought about pitching or positioning myself or the work that I do as an aspect of economic resilience and digital transformation. So that's definitely something that I'll think about. Another funding that we should be tracking that I thought about is maybe individual philanthropists, maybe who could be putting in money directly. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll answer the "are we still pitching" question, and I would speak for us. I'm sorry, we're not a media house. We are a civil society organization. So I think that's why I'm more that works in media. So that's why you'd see me moving towards the CSO bit, yeah. So we are restructuring ourselves and thinking about the digital transformation. In what sense? The rapid growth of AI. And a bit on economic resilience, because we've also introduced a program in our institution on enterprise development. Thank you. See, advantage of having someone in the same institution.
I see that.
Enterprise development. So we realized there's a notion, and I stand to be corrected, quote unquote, that currently the donor countries feel like Kenya is at a democratic state. And in essence, that's not the case, because when they were funding governance and democracy, they were like, Kenya is at a dictatorship state. But right now, they feel like we are more democratic. But so on the governance bit, you find that most donors don't relate with it. But when you put the aspect of digital transformation and economic resilience and just relate it, and especially when it comes to young people, because thanks to the Gen Z uprising, people saw that actually, so young people are actually interested in things, especially in politics. So that's where we are slowly aligning ourselves to. Thank you. Sorry,
Thank you. 2 minutes now, 30 seconds.
All right, so I'll respond to the last question. I think donor funding will continue to shrink. Well, at least in as much as Trump is the president of the free world. And upon joining the foundation that I work with now, I had never considered, having reserves as a media practitioner and whatnot. And I think for us, that's one of the things that helped us get through COVID without any major changes. We don't often hear people in our space discussing, okay, so what are we putting aside for a rainy day? How are we making ourselves sustainable? How do we cast ahead and plan for, changes in the world? And so I think that's something that I'm starting to genuinely think through, and I'm hoping it's a conversation that we can start having. How do we keep our reserves? How do we stay ready and galvanized for difficult times ahead?
Thank you.
I was to answer the second question on digital transformation. I think Lynette has expounded on it well. Basically, right now, advocacy is changing from the traditional ways of advocating and media work to now everything is being done digitally. So how can you use tech for advocacy? I think that is majorly what we are working on right now. How to train basically the youth on how they can use AI, but also the digital spaces that they already are, like TikTok, to advocate for various issues and to report, basically use it as a media platform. And also the last one on the shrinking, donor. If donor funding continues to shrink, what is plan B? I think speaking from a CSO perspective, I don't think most CSOs have a plan B, because we are all applying for the same donors. Unapata Inuka Kenya, African Census, DTISA, Transparency International, we are all applying to the same OSF for the foundation, and we are all having the same agenda. So I think it's time we think of a plan B.
There's always a plan B, always.
All right, I'll also answer the last question. I wouldn't say donor funding is ending, in and of itself. I'd say unconditional funding is ending. You're not just being given money and told, go do your work. You're being told your agenda is 1, promote good governance, 2, as in it's laid out for you, and then it's your job to now figure out how you're going to implement these things. So one of the things, so right now at Africa Uncensored, we have a mix of about 80% grant funding, 20% commercial funding. And we want to grow our commercial revenue doing things like partnerships with organizations that align with our values and need our services. So we produce documentaries for them. We are able to do trainings. We're able to enable to just go out and do a kind of research work that will help these organizations advance. And then the other thing we're doing is we're using the funding we've been getting in the past to kind of prepare ourselves for a more sustainable present. So for example, we got funding from Ford, and one of the things we did was we got our own server to host our own content to cut down on the costs that the money we were spending on like AWS hosting and other things like those. So because these donors will communicate and say, we'll get to a point where you're not just able to do whatever you want with this money. So what do you want to do before that, now that it's still unrestricted, so that when it does become restricted, you're not feeling the pinch because you spent all the money to pay salaries, for example. So preparing for financial sustainability, trying to get more revenue from our audiences by engaging with them directly and telling them this is the kind of journalism that you like, that actually speaks to you. How is it produced? It needs money. Give us money, we produce it. So explaining that proposition to our audiences and telling them this is the work we're doing and we need your support, because if we don't do it, no one else will. And some people have actually been able to give us money directly through things like platforms like Patreon. At the end of our stories, we put our pay bill and people actually send us money. So it's been really interesting to get our audience to contribute to our storytelling in that way. And then I'd also say one of the ways is by kind of like collaborating as consortia to apply for grants, and then knowing that you have a specific skill set you're bringing into these collaborations rather than applying for a grant where you do everything. Because it'll get to reporting time and then suddenly you're like, we did so many things. Yeah, so trying to distribute this funding to everyone who is in your space, so you're not also competing for the same funding. And when it's time to do the reporting, you all have collaborated on activities and it's amplified the impact, and then everyone is happy, and that's an even bigger sell the next time you're going around to ask for funding. So working together in that way is really useful. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm hoping more people will answer the last question because we also don't have a plan B, so I'm keen to hear more on that. But I want to tackle the second one. I'm not sure whether we're pitching from a media support, position or governance and stability, but I think we should be pitching from a stability and economic resilience position, because I'm speaking from a civil society organization perspective. You see a lot of funders that will give you project funding to run certain projects. They won't even give you a project management fee. So that is really difficult. It makes it difficult for you to execute those activities because you've got lights to switch on, you've got staff to pay. So I think there needs to be that consideration that organizations need to be sustainable. And it shouldn't be about the work, but it should be about, the overheads, because that's what enables the work to be done efficiently.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I've just been told we have 1 minute. Let's continue. I'm counting. 30 seconds. I have my timer on. Okay.
What they say, the people from the civil society, the narrative is not media support, but digital transformation, economic resilience, and all of those things that you put there. Add societal resilience to that, because efforts now are to work with the media, not just support the media to carry out the stories, but use the media to ensure that there's a societal resilience. And how do you achieve that? That is why some efforts are centered around cleaning up the internet so that journalists are able to participate online with their stories and whatnot. Participate, but also protected, because we know journalists are attacked online because of that. So clean up the space, efforts there, but also amplify their content. So there's also effort. So there's a lot, not just media support, but digital transformation, or in an effort to contribute to societal resilience and other things.
Thank you so much. So we will stop the comments from there, unfortunately, because our time is up. Please feel free to follow me afterwards. This was the report I was informing you about, where we've broken down what funding in Africa, media funding in Africa currently looks like. Again, follow me after this in case of more questions. And thank you. Please feel free to email me when you get the chance. You have been an amazing audience. I really appreciate the information you've shared today. Enjoy the rest of the program.